So everything in TradersPost is based around this concept of a webhook. And a webhook is essentially how a signal makes it into TradersPost from the outside world. And platforms like TradingView, TrendSpider, etc., they all have the ability to build strategies and then have those strategies emit signals. And you can set up alerts to be sent to you when those signals happen. And you also have the ability to send those alerts to a webhook. So that's basically how TradingView is able to send a signal out of their system and into TradersPost. So we're just going to create a quick webhook called stocks, and we're going to have it be the stocks asset class. And we're going to allow Square as one of the available tickers. We'll just add a couple others here to demonstrate. So now that we have the webhook created, we can create a new strategy for that webhook, and we'll just call it stocks. And we're going to associate that strategy with the webhook that we just created. And we're going to default this strategy to be both sides, which means both bullish and bearish. And we're going to default the tickers to Square. So when new subscriptions are created to the strategy, it'll default the list of tickers to Square. And we want the asset class to be stocks. And we'll leave all of these settings blank for now. And we'll do entry market and exit market. So now that I have this strategy created, one of the things that a lot of customers had asked for is the ability to share a strategy with other customers. So once you have the strategy created, if you click access, this is where you can basically control giving access to the strategy to other users. So I can find another account of mine here, and I'm going to give that account access to that strategy. So now you can see that this user has been given access, but they haven't subscribed to the strategy. So if I were to log into my other account here, I would now see this strategy and I could subscribe to it. So I'm just going to remove my access now. So this basically allows you to create strategies and publish them and share them with other people so that they just have to subscribe to the strategy and they start getting those signals, and they don't have to know anything about how to build a strategy or anything that's involved with the more complicated the side of building the strategy, which involves writing code. You have to be more familiar with TradingView, etc. So we have this strategy created now called stocks, but there are no subscribers. So I'm going to subscribe to my own strategy here, and I'm going to connect it to one of my paper accounts. So I'm just going to call this TradersPost TS stocks. And I'm calling it that because it's the stock strategy and it's connected to the TradersPost TS account. See how it's connected to the TradersPost TS. And we're going to auto submit, and we're going to allow both sides. That means both bullish and bearish. And we're going to only allow Square in this strategy subscription. We want it to be stocks, and we're going to use 5% of our portfolio value to dynamically calculate the quantity when we're entering a new position. All right, so we're going to save this strategy subscription now, and you have a bullish example and a bearish example. So this is what it would look like if we got a bullish signal. We're going to mark it by Square. We're going to buy 66 shares. It calculated that we can buy 66 shares because this TradersPost TS account has $112,000, and 5% of 5% of that is roughly $6,000. And we can buy 66 shares at a price of 84.71. So if we do the bearish example, it's basically the same thing, except the entry order is now a market sell short, and the exit order is a buy to cover. All right, so this looks good. So let's enable that strategy subscription. And it is enabled now. And now that that strategy subscription is enabled, we can send signals to that webhook manually from within TradersPost just for testing purposes. Normally, you would take this webhook URL here and you would copy and paste it and put it in TradingView or TrendSpider so that they can send the signal to that webhook. And I'll show you how you can do that here in a little bit. So let's manually send a request to that webhook for Square. And let's see what happens. All right, so it created a trade for that TradersPost TS account. Let's view the trade. So now we entered Square with 66 shares at 84.72. So let's go back and look at that brokerage account now. You'll see that we have an open position for Square. It's long. It bought 66 shares. Now let's go back to that webhook and let's send a sell signal. All right, so that trade sold the long position and it entered short. So now if we go back over to the TradersPost TS brokerage account, you'll see now that we sold the long position and we entered short. So now we're short 66 shares. So now let's go back to our strategy subscription here and let's make a few changes to the subscription. Let's check use signal quantity. What that will do is that if the signal has a quantity in it, it will use that quantity instead of dynamically calculating a quantity based on this setting. So let's save. And now, so just to make sure we're currently short. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send a signal to that webhook to buy, except I'm going to send a quantity of 5. So because we're currently short 66 and we're sending a buy signal and we're sending a quantity of 5, this is not going to fully exit the short position and then enter long. It's only going to do a partial exit of that short position. So that trade is completed. You see how it exited, but it didn't enter because there's still an open short position after we exited that 5. So see how it exit partial position, exit partial bearish square position. The open position on square will be partially exited, and the open position on square will not be fully exited, so we cannot enter a new position. All right, so there's some other new features that I'm going to show you that aren't live in production yet, but it's something that we've been working on for the last couple of weeks. So when we send a webhook request, there's this new side parameter that you can send in the webhook. So if we're currently short, and what if I want to send a signal where I only want to exit the short position, but I don't want to enter long on the other side? So we can send a request to that webhook now. We can say the action of buy, we want the side to be flat, meaning that after we execute the buy, we want the position to be flat and we don't want to enter long on the other side. So if I send this signal, you'll see that the signal was action of buy and a side of flat, and it exited the remaining shares of that short position. And because it's an exit only signal, there was no long position entered on the other side. So in order to enter long, I would have to send another request to buy. And let's do a quantity of 5. So now we're going to go long 5. So if we go look at that account here, you'll see it now that we're long 5 shares. So we'll go back to our webhook now, and let's send another request to sell, but this time let's send a quantity of 15. So 15 is a greater quantity than we have in the open position. And let's see what happens. So it sold the 5 shares that we were long on, and then it went short 10 shares. So we sent a signal with a quantity of 15, but because we had an open position that was long with 5 shares, it subtracted the 5 open quantity from the 15, and then it went short 10 shares. If anyone has any questions, feel free to just put them in the Zoom chat, and we'll answer those questions. Or if there's anything that you want me to show you or to go into greater detail, just put your question in the chat and we'll be sure to cover it. So now if we go back to that broker, we'll see now that we're short 10 shares. This was the order to exit the 5 long shares. And then as soon as this order was filled, it immediately sent the order to go short with 10 shares. All right. So the next thing that I want to show you is another feature where you can disable side swapping. What this means is that you can basically take both sides, but it's never going to automatically switch to the other side. So if you're long 5 shares and you send a sell signal, it's only going to exit those long shares and it'll never automatically flip short. So that basically means in order to flip to the other side, you would always have to send 2 signals. So that's just kind of up to you to decide. Is your strategy always going to be in a position, meaning you're always going to be either bullish or bearish? Or is there going to be times where you're not in a position and you want to exit the open position and then later you would send another signal to enter? So let's disable side swapping and see what that looks like. So we're currently short right now. So let's send a signal to the webhook to buy. So now you see it closed that short position. Kale asked, when will disable side swapping be available to test use? That's something that I'm going to try to get live in production either this Friday or over the weekend. As soon as it's live in production, there will be an post in the announcements channel in Discord. So just there's another way to actually do this today without this new functionality. So if I were to send a buy signal, so now I'm long 66 shares. Say I had side swapping disabled. Say I had disable side swapping unchecked. I could send a webhook to, send a request to the webhook with an exit action. And this will basically exit the open position without entering on the other side. The reason why this side parameter that I showed you earlier is so important, and I'm going to switch over here. Actually, I think I can show you here. After we have this side parameter with TradingView strategies, you'll be able to send the side parameter in the webhook, and you'll be able to use this strategy.market position. And what that will do is TradingView will fill in the side value with a value of either long, short, or flat. So if TradingView sends you an action of buy and a value of flat inside, that means that it's only exiting the short position and it's not going to enter bullish on the other side. So you can do this manually with the exit action. The reason why it's not very convenient is because with TradingView, the strategy.order.action variable only has a value of buy or sell. And then the strategy.market position variable is what tells you whether or not the action is both exiting the open position and entering on the other side, or it's just exiting the open position. So between these two values, TradersPost can now understand a little bit more clearly about what the instruction is when that strategy sends a signal to us. Does that answer your question, Kale? Does that make sense? All right. So one other thing I want to show you is the reason why this one is named TradersPost TS is because this paper broker is actually powered by this TradeStation account. So the market data source for this paper account is actually coming from this account. Kale says, yes, thank you. So that is something we can do now with TradingView alerts. Yeah, it's possible. It just requires a little bit more work where you would either have to modify the strategy so that you can send an action of exit when you only want to exit the open position and you don't want to enter on the other side. Does that make sense? And with the new side parameter, you don't have to do that, because the strategy will just work out of the box with TradingView, and TradingView will send the action and the side. So we know if you want to only exit the open position and not enter on the other side, or if you want to exit the open position and then flip to the other side. So this market data source feature is something that's been in production for a little while. But basically, TradersPost market data is delayed by default. So if you want to use your own market data, you could choose your Robinhood account or TD Ameritrade or any broker you want to connect to TradersPost. And then you can make the TradersPost paper accounts market data be powered by that brokerage connection. All right, so let's see. I'm currently, so there's no position open right now. Let's send a buy signal and let's open up a long position. So now I am long 66 shares. So what if I want to add to the existing position? Some strategies require pyramiding or have multiple entries potentially. So you can send a request to the webhook with an action of add, and let's add 4. So we currently have 66 shares. So let's make it an even 70 now. So that trade is executed, and we added to our square position. We added to our bullish square position. We added a quantity of 4 based on the signal that we sent. So now let's go back and look at that account. Whoops, wrong account. And you'll see now that we're long 70 shares. So now if we go back to the webhook and let's sell, but let's choose flat as the side. So now what this is going to do is it's going to exit the long position, but because side is flat, it's not going to flip bearish and open up a short position. And now we've exited those 70 shares. And if we go over to that brokerage account, now you'll see that we are in no open position right now. So just to show you that again, let's enter short now with a sell. So now we're short 66 shares. So let's send a buy, but let's send the side as bullish. So what this means is that we're currently bearish, we're currently short. We're going to send a buy signal. and we want to be bullish after the trade is executed. So that means it's going to exit the short position. It's going to buy to cover that short position, and then it's going to enter long because side is bullish. So now we've exited that short position, and now we're long 66 shares. The side function is not available, and the side swapping is also not in production yet. So the only way you have to only exit without swapping is to send an action of exit. So that would be this exit action. So you can do that today. So that's the only way to do it. So once this other stuff is live, it just makes it a little bit easier, and it works with TradingView strategies out of the box without you having to modify the strategy code or having to send this extra exit action. Yep, no worries, Kale. So just to show you what that looks like, we send an action of exit. So that tells the system that we only want to exit the open position and we don't want to enter on the other side. All right. So a few other things that we've been working on that we've added recently that are, again, are not in production yet, but hopefully they're going to be in production by this Friday or over the weekend, is there are scenarios where you could have a bullish only strategy and you don't ever want to have a strategy mess with a position that's on the other side. So there's this new checkbox called sides isolated. So even though it's a bullish strategy, say there was a bearish position open, without this sides isolated, if we received a buy signal and there was currently a bearish position open, it would exit that bearish position before entering bullish. Sometimes you don't want that to happen. So watch what happens when we choose bullish only. And let's see. So currently we're not in a position. The strategy subscription is now set to bullish only. Let's manually open up a bearish square position. So let's just open up a short position of one, quantity of one square. So now we're short one share of square. If I were to send, again, just to show you this, the strategy subscription is currently bullish only and sides isolated is not checked. So when we send a buy signal, because sides isolated is not checked, it is going to exit that short position and then enter long. But now watch what happens if I check sides isolated. And I'm going to remove this percent of portfolio value just so that we're only doing one share. So now let's manually close this position. Let's reopen a short position on square. So now we're short one share of square. And now, because the strategy subscription is bullish only and we have sides isolated, and that brokerage account has a short position open, when we try to send a buy signal, let's see what happens. So the trade was rejected this time because there's currently an open bearish short position and sides is isolated. So we can't exit that short position because this strategy subscription is bullish only and the sides are isolated. So basically this strategy subscription is not allowed to touch that bearish position. And because we can't close that bearish position, that means that we can't enter bullish on the other side. So there was no exit order calculated and no entry order, hence the signal was rejected. So now if I were to manually close this short position or go back to this and change this to bearish, now we have this short position open still. Because the strategy subscription was changed to bearish, I can send the buy signal. And that short position is exited. So now we can send a sell signal and we'll enter short. So now we're short one share. All right, so I think that covers that new functionality. Let's change this back to both. Turn off sides isolated, And let's see. All right, is there anything else before I show you how to set up another type of strategy for futures? Is there any other questions or anything else you want me to cover? Roger asks, why do I have to subscribe to my own strategy? Why would I want other people to subscribe? So why do you have to subscribe to your own strategy? The subscription is what connects your strategy to a brokerage account. So I've set up this strategy, and I'll answer the second question here in a second. So I have multiple brokerage accounts here. I have this paper account and this paper account. So I could actually subscribe to this strategy multiple times. So I'm going to subscribe to that same strategy, but this time I'm going to connect it to this paper account instead of this one. So this basically means that you can subscribe to your strategy in a paper account, or you could, have a cash account and subscribe to that strategy in your cash account, but then you could also connect your IRA, and you could have the same strategy executing the orders in multiple different brokerage accounts. And the position size of each of those subscriptions would be different based on which account you're connecting it to. And we can dynamically calculate that quantity based on the size of that account. So let's take a look at what that looks like. We'll do both sides square. It's connected to the other TradersPost paper broker. And we're going to do entry market and exit market. And let's enable this. Let's just rename this to TradersPost stocks. And let's just double check the settings on this one. So we want auto submit both sides. It's square only. It's connected to the TradersPost TS account. Asset class of stocks. Let's turn off use signal quantity. Entry market, exit market. Okay, so now we have two subscriptions for the same strategy in two separate accounts. So let's just check these accounts to make sure. Whoops, wrong one. So let's just manually close this short position. So they both have no open position right now. Let me actually do one thing. Let's reset this paper broker to be a $50,000 account. And let's reset this one to be a $100,000 account. And let's change one of the strategy subscriptions to be 5% of my portfolio value. And let's change the other one to be 10%. So now when I send a signal to that webhook, because there are two subscriptions for that strategy, that signal and those trades are going to get executed on two brokerage accounts. So if I go up to my notifications here, you'll see that it was executed in this account and this account. So let's go look at those two accounts. So we have 29 shares in this account and 118 shares in this account. So it was one signal, one strategy executed across multiple brokerage accounts. So as for your second question, why would I want other people to subscribe? It's a good question. It's pretty common to have what's called copy trading. Collective 2, and other systems allow other traders to just subscribe to your strategy. So you could sell that strategy to other people. Eventually within TradersPost, we want to have like a marketplace of strategies where you could build your strategy and you can share it with other TradersPost customers and charge other customers a monthly fee to subscribe to your strategy. So it's just another way that you can make a little bit of money off your strategy. And it makes it easier for other TradersPost customers that don't know how to build strategies and don't have that advanced knowledge. And they can just kind of browse through the available strategies in the marketplace. They can pick a strategy and then connect it to their broker. And then whenever a signal comes into that strategy, all of the subscribers of that strategy will get those trades executed in their broker. Does that make sense and answer your second question, Roger? Yep. Harry says, like the marketplace idea for strategy. Roger asks, and move the market. I mean, let's be honest. I don't think any of us have enough money to move the market. It would take billions and billions of dollars to realistically move the market in any meaningful way. Technically, you're not wrong. If there were it depends on it. Of course, it depends on the ticker, depends how much liquidity there is, how much volume there is for that ticker. So in the future, we may need to have limits on the strategy that controls how many subscribers there are, how many are allowed to be, or what's the total amount of money we allow across all subscribers. Those are things that we definitely need to think through, but at least for the tickers that we allow in futures, which is basically NASDAQ and the S&P 500, there's no way that we're ever going to be moving those markets. And those are the only tickers that we allow currently for futures. Does that make sense, Roger? Does that answer your question? Cool. All right. Before I, actually, one last thing. The strategies which I showed at the beginning, this access control, that's how you would basically give other people private access to subscribe to your strategy. So if you had a buddy or a friend, can a manual trade on, Harry asked, can a manual trade on TradersPost and people subscribe? Harry, I don't quite understand that question. Can a manual trade on TradersPost and people subscribe? Do you mean that can people subscribe to copy your manual trade signals, like copy trading? Yeah, we don't support that yet, but it's definitely on our roadmap to where you could create a strategy, and instead of the signals for that strategy coming from a webhook, they could come from a brokerage connection. So you could basically say, whenever an order comes into this brokerage account, send a signal to that strategy. And basically what that would do is it would replicate those orders on all of the subscribers' brokerage accounts. So it's not something we have today, but it's definitely something that we would love to support in the future, to basically unlock the ability to copy trade, where the signals are coming from a manual human as opposed to the signals coming from an automated trading strategy. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question? Cool. Yes. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and those are features that platforms like Collective 2 they have those types of features, and there are a couple other copy trading platforms, but we've purposely built TradersPost in a way where it doesn't really matter where the signals come from. It could come from TradingView. You could manually input. So actually, I take that back, Harry. There is actually a way you could accomplish that today. If you wanted to create a strategy, and if you wanted to send the signals manually via this send request functionality, you could totally do that. But it's definitely better if you could just trade in your normal broker like you normally do, and you don't have to go into TradersPost and send those signals. Just by the nature of you placing a trade in Thinkorswim or your Robinhood account, all of the subscribers to that strategy would get the same trades replicated in their broker. But you could do it from this send request screen if you wanted to. Awesome. Cool. Any other questions or any other things that you'd like me to cover before I move on to the next thing? Great. Sounds great, guys. All right. So the next thing, we'll quickly just set up another strategy for a different asset class. So we'll set one up for futures. Whoops, NQ. And let's create a new strategy. We'll associate it to that futures webhook. We'll just call the strategy futures. And let's take both sides, default it to NQ. We want the asset class to be futures. And let's just default it to a quantity of 1. And let's enter market and exit market. Now let's create a subscription to that strategy. And let's connect it to the TradersPost TS account. And we want to auto submit. And everything looks good. Let's save the strategy subscription and enable it. So now when I send a signal to that futures webhook, we're going to get an open long position on NQ in that broker. So now we have an open position on Square and futures in this one paper account. So let's do the same thing. Let's do it for options. Let's do it for Square. Let's create a new strategy. Call it options. Associate it to the options webhook. Take both sides. And we're going to choose options. And as soon as I choose options, it's going to show us some additional fields. See how it hides it when it's stocked. But as soon as I choose options, it shows these additional fields where you can configure what types of option trade you want to make. So both means that when we get a bullish signal, we're going to buy calls. When we get a bearish signal, it's going to exit those calls and then buy puts. If you chose call only, that would basically mean when you get a bullish signal, it's going to buy calls. And when you get a bearish signal, it's going to exit those calls and then open up short calls. Most people, I think, want to use both. And for this little demo, we'll use option type of both. And if you wanted to scan the option chain to find a different contract, you can use these fields. So by default, we're not going to put in any values in here, and it's basically just going to select the first contract. And let's enter market and exit market. All right, so we have this strategy created now. Now let's create a subscription for it, and let's connect it to that same TradersPost TS account. So now you can see the example entry order and example exit order is a options contract, where previously it was futures and stocks. You can see that it's selecting the June 10th $84 strike call. Let's turn on auto submit and let's enable this. Oops, I have to check Square to check at least one ticker. let's just rename this so it's consistent. And let's take a look at the bearish example. So because we have sides both, that means that we're taking both bullish and bearish. And because we have option type of both, this means that when we get a bearish signal, it's going to buy to open puts. And the bullish example is buy to open calls. So now let's send a signal to that options webhook. So now we're long calls. And let's go take a look. So now we have 3 asset classes with open positions and 3 asset classes and 1 paper broker, which is pretty cool. You can have paper trading across multiple asset classes in a single paper account. Of course, you can connect an Alpaca paper account or a TradeStation paper account and trade within those paper brokers. And frankly, those paper brokers will give you a little bit more realistic of a trading experience, but it's useful for quickly testing a lot of different strategies across a lot of different paper accounts. Whereas you can really only have 1 or 2 paper accounts within Alpaca, or really only 1 paper account within TradeStation. So now let's go back to the options webhook and let's send a sell signal. And let's see what happens. So it's going to sell to close those long calls and buy to open puts. So now if we go over to that account, we'll see now that we have long puts open. So now the functionality that I showed you before with the side variable, this works the same for options or futures or stocks. The behavior is no different. So because we have long puts open, that's a bearish position. Let's send a signal to, we'll send a buy signal, which is a bullish signal. And because we have a bearish position open, and let's send side flat. So this is basically only gonna sell to close those long puts. And you might be scratching your head. The terminology is a little bit confusing because the action is always buy or sell. It basically just means buy is bullish and sell is bearish. So when you are working with options and you get an action of buy and you're trading puts, it can be a little bit confusing because the signal was a buy, but because it's a bullish signal and we had bearish puts open, that means it's going to sell those puts. So now if I send another buy signal with side bullish, this is basically going to open up bullish long calls. And if I send a sell signal with side bearish instead of flat, now it's going to flip to the other side. So it's going to sell to close those long calls and buy to open long puts. So that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover today. Is there anything else, any other questions, any functionality that you'd like me to show you? I guess the other things I could show you really quick, in the left, excuse me, in the left menu, to get back to your dashboard, if you just click the logo at the top left, you'll see now that we have these an asset classes section and a wait list section. If you're interested in a specific brokerage account or you're interested in the API, you can join the wait list for any of these things. And similarly, the asset classes, if you're interested in waiting to join the beta for crypto or Forex, you can click the join wait list here. And once you do that, you'll be on the wait list, and that will allow us to notify you whenever things become available. So options and futures are actually available now. They're just still in beta. And in order to trade, you can paper trade options and futures, but in order to trade live options and futures with live money, you have to send an email to support@traderspost.io to have the live options or live futures enabled on your account. So Roger asked, when can we trade all futures? Unfortunately, I don't really have a concrete ETA on when that'll be. Right now, we're still limited to NQ, MNQ, ES, and MES. But sometime before the end of the year, for sure, I don't want to say for sure, it's something that we're working on. But at some point in the future, you'll have the ability to trade any future symbol. So you could trade oil futures, corn futures, etc. So actual commodities. And then Harry asks, paper trade of options for TradersPost broker? Yes. You can trade options, futures, and stocks within the TradersPost paper broker. So see how I have this TradersPost paper broker, and we are trading stocks, futures, and options. The only thing is that in order to trade options, you have to connect the market data source for the TradersPost paper broker to be powered by a brokerage that has options data. So you'll see here, if I go to the details of this paper broker, we have support for stocks, options, and futures. But as if I were to let's change this to be powered by Robinhood. Well, Robinhood is stocks only. So now I don't have the ability to support options within that paper broker. What if I want to pair spread stocks or any asset? Roger asks, what if I want to pair spread stocks or any asset? I mean, that would basically be possible with multiple strategies and multiple strategy subscriptions. So you could have one strategy subscription for stocks and one strategy subscription for futures. Does that answer your question? Cool. Yeah. Yep. No problem. And Harry, does that answer your question about paper trading with TradersPost paper broker? Yep. So because TD Ameritrade supports options, if I choose that broker, and now I go over here to the details, now you'll see that we have access to trade stocks, options, and futures. So I'm going to switch this back to be powered by my TradeStation account. And we have the ability to paper trade stocks, options, and futures. So definitely make sure you go join any of the wait lists of things that you would like to be a part of in the future, so that you can get your email address on the list, and that way we can communicate with you via email whenever there are updates regarding any of these pieces of functionality. And I believe that is it for today. Any other final questions or anything else you'd like me to cover before we wrap things up for today? Great. All right, everyone. Well, I really appreciate you attending, and we'll get this video, the recording of this, uploaded to YouTube, and we'll send an update in the Discord chat with the links to everything. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.